Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Water Wells Licensing and Registration webinar for the Langley Environmental Partner Society. My name is Amanda Smith, and I'm the Agricultural Programs Coordinator. We've been doing a series of webinars actually since as early as January, and this is the conclusion, but I'm going to get into that in another slide. So today is April 22nd. Happy Earth Day. We are talking about water and how important it is. So we'll move on to our first slide because I say that, yes, I'm from the Langley Environmental Partner Society, and that would be our first acronym for tonight, and it's LEPS. And sometimes when I usually do a recording, this is when my computer freezes, when it's idle. So just bear with me. And I do have a video editor on the end. Okay, so who is LEPS? So being our first acronym, so we are, our mission statement is protecting and restoring the natural environment through education, cooperation, and action. We are non-for-profit, non-government, and an environmental organization. So with that being said, we're sort of like the bridge between residents and also different layers of government, just for education purposes. And because we love being stewards of the land, and we know that a lot of our natural resources are very important. So this is our 31st year of being in existence. So we started in 1993, and we are typically throughout the year, we're made up of a mixture of full-time and seasonal staff. Right now we are on kind of the shoulder sort of the season, even though we are ramping up into spring. We still only have probably about 6 full-time staff people. But our core programs through this is not only about restoration, it is so much more. So we have watershed stewardship, agricultural stewardship, restoration, and education. And through this webinar tonight, we are kind of ticking off one of our boxes, which is education, and to some degree, a little bit of agricultural stewardship and watershed stewardship. So like I said before, we were doing a lot of webinars as early as January. And thank you to anybody or everybody who did attend those webinars, and then the support that you guys gave us, and also to your properties. That's a #1 thing. There was a lot of people who went through the webinars, and they learned an immense amount. And like everybody else, that's how we can kind of gauge their learning is the people that are attending tonight will be followed up with a feedback form. But it's really, really important for your support, and we thank you to everybody. So we're going to be doing more informative webinars in the fall months because summer is the busiest time for a lot of agricultural people, especially on your rural lands. So we're going to be returning in the fall with many new themes. And just so you know that a lot of the webinars that were done in the past few months have been done by LEPS staff because we actually rewrote and updated the land management guide for small horse owners and lot farmers. So we had to go through all the provincial government regulations when they were all updated. And anybody who's living on rural properties, this is kind of a go-to guide for them. And we're really happy that people are using it. There's an online version as well as a printed version. But yeah, our funder actually is a federal funder. It's Eco Action Canada. So we're very happy to have them be one of our funders to do all of this sort of work. And yeah, so I said that we're kind of undergoing activities in these shoulder months, and our program actually is called Community Collaboration Towards Water Quality Improvement. So this program allows us to do outreach work in Langley to reduce pollution and bacterial contamination in freshwater ecosystems. The activities include webinars and best management practices for rural properties, site consultations for free plants. That might be new to some of you, and also tarp giveaways. So there's a lot of stuff that LEPS does that sometimes doesn't always get advertised. And did you know we created a series of fact sheets that are quick little guides. So depending on what kind of agriculture you do or what kind of farming you do, we have some even translated into Punjabi. So we've done quite a bit of work. And this is one of the great things about sharing this with all of you, because it's some work that we've already done, but it's also what we're going to be doing in the fall now. So this is the very last spring webinar, and we're going out with a bang. It literally is well licensing and registration, and it's a heavy one. That's why we're going through this kind of step by step, and hopefully it'll answer some of your questions. So we're talking about water. it is very much a finite source. A lot of people that's gone through any sort of agricultural or gardening education has kind of learned that water is definitely finite. We don't have lots of it. Being called the wet coast is a great thing because we get more rain than other areas, but we do have some current issues within the township of Langley, and because we have some border municipalities, we can say the same thing for, let's say, South Surrey and also the city of Abbotsford. But yeah, so within Langley and other growing municipalities, there is an increased need for wells due to changes in land use. For example, wells are being drilled in previously vacant lands. So this actually is happening. So land use can be defined in a lot of different methods, and there could be a lot of people with some opinions on land use that is within the township of Langley. But there are more wells being drilled. And that said, anybody who is a driller for wells, it's been told and shared with LEPS that that operator who is doing the drilling sometimes does tell the landowner that you don't have to get any licenses or register anything. It's that actually is incorrect information. So that kind of leads another layer into this, to which I'll get into a little bit later. So we also have increased activities on land for the use of farming. So this is a changing time right now, financially across Canada, and then within all of our provinces, and then it all kind of trickles down into our own local municipalities. So those folks who currently have rural properties and are farming, they're trying to be very strategic about how to use their property and keep up their farm status and make it profitable for them. So they're using more water, which means that's more of a water draw out of groundwater. We also are finding that, yeah, water is finite because of the result of climate change. So it is very much since the year of 2015, we have been having longer summers that we do not have a lot of rainfall. There could be some blips within certain years that we get more rainfall than other years. But that said, I can go back to 2015 and, anything that happens day to day and has happened many years ago is all part of history. And in 2015, we had an extremely long drought in the summer. So anybody who owned rural property and did their very careful note taking probably has in their notes from 2015, wow, that was extremely dry. And since then, we have been having within the province series of wildfires. It's just been chronic. And we see the smoke. So a lot of voices in the summertime tend to be like mine because smoke is very abrasive on our health systems and can cause a lot of irritation with some local resident folks. Now, we also have an issue with not enough snowpack on the local mountains. So that has hit the news this year for sure. And because they have said it on the news, it's also linked to it's going to be another long, hot, dry summer. So now on the flip side, it sometimes rains a lot. And I always bring up whenever I start talking about, because it's burned in our memories right now, is that the November of 2021. The Fraser Valley tends to not get a lot of, weather and environment news within the country, but we were it for at least 3 days. And that's what everybody in Canada was talking about, because the visualness of the flooding within the Abbotsford, Chilliwack, Hope area was something that we'll never forget. So when we go through many, many months of no rainfall, it makes that ground very difficult and hard. And where does it go? It can't absorb. And that's why we were in the position that we were in. So with that being said, another interesting thing to note is when it rains that much and it cools and it does not drain that fast, we had a lot of people outside of Langley that had damage to their wells. They were contaminated. So we are in a very strong agricultural area. even mentioning the other neighboring municipalities. So all of that manure goes somewhere. And that is the reason why LEPS is doing this particular, webinar, is that, wow, water is important. And when we start contaminating our own wells, when we have to truck water in for our own drinking water, that is very much a problem, because that affects human health and it affects the health of animals as well. So we have long, hot drought seasons, and then we have, when it rains, it rains. So we had, anybody who loves the summer weather, and they just think it's just so beautiful. I always follow up with, we need rain, because we don't want to be in the position that we were in, having our wells affected. And there's not a lot of data on how many wells were impacted. That's unfortunate. And with the ministry, it's going to take them a lot of time to be able to gather that data, and it probably won't be available till a few more years. So now we're going on to the topic of essentially well registration and licensing, and the why. So this is the first time where I've stepped out of the Agricultural Environmental Management Code of Practice. And that would be your second, sort of a short-term word there, saying the AEM code. It's our new acronym, number 2. The AEM code is all about waste. So it could be waste in many different facets. So most of it has to deal with fecal matter, whether it is animal/human, how we're disposing of it, and how it gets into our water systems, and also our wells. So that we've done other presentations to which we've covered, setbacks and given cheat sheets. And all of those cheat sheets are actually within the provincial government guidelines, which is within the AEM code. And a lot of these provincial regulations were rewritten within the period of 2016. That's when the Water Sustainability Act was rewritten to include all users of groundwater for non-domestic purposes. You need a license. And that sounds to be very, very hard. And that's where I get into the whole controversial thing. But really, when it comes down to it, the endeavor was to help deal with water scarcity in the province. So the provincial government thinks about the entire province, not just each individual municipality. We feel it very difficult within the township of Langley because, and I've said this in previous other webinars, is Langley Township is so special. It has 1,500 kilometers of watercourses and 700 kilometers are salmon-bearing streams. And our parcelization is much smaller than, let's say, Abbotsford and Surrey. So that means if it's smaller, we have more parcels, and that means more wells are being drilled. So we feel that very, very much intensely for us, but the province kind of created this because we have other areas of the province that may not be as populated, but still have these things called wildfires. And it just helps the provincial government know exactly where the water users are, how much they're using, and how can they plan for the long term about really figuring out what can we do for the people, all of the people that live within the province. There always is, federal help, absolutely, and there's other grants that the province can apply for, and also support to local agriculture. But that is the reason why the well registration licensing has to happen. So instead of actually typing out and saying it all, I'm just going to, for the next few slides, I'm just going to say R and L. So registration literally says, hi, yes, I am here. I have a well. Here it is. And then the licensing would be use of groundwater. And then we go into some terms here through the Water Sustainability Act. That's your third acronym, the WSA. Is a stream is a natural water course and a natural body of water, or a source of water supply, and a lake, pond, river, creek, spring, ravine, gulch, wetland, or glacier. So that is a stream. An aquifer means a geological formation containing or capable of containing groundwater. And groundwater is essentially water manually occurring below the surface of the ground. And I know I'll probably get a comment within some of the questions later about how there's a lot of artesian wells that are not being utilized to their fullest capacity. We would probably actually touch base with the water people and the sustainability people within the township of Langley first before we go to provincial level. So we have some bullet points there because I'm sure that people are having some questions at this point. So registration and license cost depends on how much water is required for use. So when you fill out your application, you just have to kind of ballpark. And if you do any sort of well maintenance, so Fraser Health says that you need to test your water out of your well once a year, just to make sure it's not contaminated. That helps you and your animals. But they just want to have a ballpark with how much you're using. And that all just goes within the application. And now we're thinking about fees. So a lot of people are not quite aware that the Sustainability Act was out in 2016. And, you know, depending upon your provincial government, they may not have had a budget in that time to start to really do outreach within local communities within BC about this change to licensing your well. That's unfortunate, and we can't really help that problem, but the fees go back. So if you have not yet registered your well, and you do that, let's say in the next week, by the time the ministry gets your application, they may or may not date back your fees to 2016. So there was a specific time to which it was March 1st of 2022, you were able to register and license your well for free and not have any fees. But unfortunately, the ministry didn't really get a lot of applications. So we're trying to do a little bit more outreach because there's a few things that have come down the pipe in the last 2 years. So that being said, the fees do include surface water and groundwater use. So if anybody is wondering at this point where I've gotten this information, this actually is from the province of BC and their government websites. So you can simply go on to well registration and licensing for your well, and you will actually see the same information. And some people don't know to go look for this information. So if you ever need any help at any time, so we have something called Front Counter BC, and you can call toll free at that phone number that I do have on the slide. And I know that it would be so convenient for all of our big agricultural areas. We have our own front counter office, but unfortunately, Langley and Abbotsford does not. So it is actually just Surrey and Chilliwack. But you can call them, you can email them, and do everything online and also pay. So this is a slide that I do pull out sometimes, and I think that a few people may have seen this slide before. But it's also, it brings home a little bit about why Langley is so special and why groundwater and wells are so important. So everything that's blue on this slide actually indicates a watercourse. That's a lot of water. So remember, I did give those stats about 1,500 kilometers of watercourses in the township, and then 700 are salmon bearing. And then the green lines are essentially by mini watershed. So you can see we have Yorkson, we have Latimer, salmon. I think a lot of folks that are on here might be over the bridge, and then most of them are sitting within the Bertrand area. And some of you might be in Little Campbell or Anderson. Now, the wonderful thing about water is that you can't control it. And its natural habit is to start to move down. So all of these wonderful little watercourses that are here, which gives our salmon its lovely habitat, it creates many ecosystems on our small parcels, they all flow south. And what a lot of people may not be aware, who could be watching this at a later time, is that our folks to the south, which is our US neighbor, state of Washington, is slightly unhappy with some of the water that flows into their state. And to the point where a lot of our practices and behaviors have kind of gone into their watercourses, because they do water quality testing, you know, south of the border and on their property. And then we also do it too. So we kind of have an idea of our counts, which essentially flow in, and damaging the shellfish industry in Boundary Bay has been one of those things that have been in the news. So our neighbors to the south are not too happy with us, which again is another reason why LEPS is doing this presentation for awareness. I love the next slide. Okay, so Langley Township has a private well network. Not many people are aware of this unless they are, they've been a LEPS follower for the last 31 years. But we have a private well network, and the wells that are registered currently are the ones highlighted in purple. So I know that we're including our boundaries here within Abbotsford and then Surrey, but this map looks quite similar to the one that I had shown. That's a lot of wells in a very small area that's all made up of all these water courses. So drainage is very important to us, which in some cases we're quite happy that we're kind of like this, we're up and down, so we do get some good drainage, but in some cases we're not, especially if we're in the Little Campbell, Bertrand, or Pepin Creek areas. But isn't that amazing how many wells? And they're the ones that are registered. Can you imagine how many more dots would be up here if we actually put up all the registered wells that are not currently right now? It'd be crazy. Okay, so we're up to the update of on the current R&L situation, so registration and license. So LEPS has been very lucky to have a conversation with the ministry, and they've admitted that there's been a delay in the process of well applications. So to confirm, this webinar is dated April 22nd, 2024. So always very good to note these dates, especially when we're talking about every day is some sort of historical action. And I mentioned 2015, so that's another year to note. So the one thing that people are not aware of, even though you missed the deadline of March 1st, 2022, you still are allowed to register your well. In fact, they really need you to, because they can't move on to their next set of what to plan for the province if we get in a really bad way. Because if we've seen kind of extreme droughts and what they've done to our crops and our livestock, there's always the opportunity that it could be worse. So at this point, you can still go register. You just have to pay a user fee each year. And depending on how much water you use and how much you're requesting, that's a really safe peace of mind for you to be able to pay your fees and you have access to the groundwater in your wells. Because there has been, if we go over to the next, part of my slide, there has been news that wells on properties within British Columbia are being shut down. And those are the ones that are probably heavy users within certain areas and were very well known, and they were didn't license. So we're coming up with things, and there's also been some things in Country Life, and that's just we have an issue with licensing. And so LEPS is trying to be here to support you in how you can license and the importance and the why. But it is so much easier to just go up ahead and do it and get that safe peace of mind instead of adding additional penalties. So we have also a new branch for the province of BC. And so we're always used to talking about the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Agriculture. So now we have another acronym, WALRUS. So who is Water, Land, Resource Stewardship? Who are they? And you can see kind of how they've done that. They've come up with walrus based on how that's been phrased. And I think a walrus is a water-loving animal. Anyway, so this particular branch of the ministry is accountable for integrated land and natural resource management, including objective setting for land and marine environments, effectively managing cumulative effects, and advancing reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, environmental sustainability, and economic growth. So I don't know how many people have done this research yet, but the people that are in Walrus, the top 3 people, are made up of, well, they actually all are made up of our current government's cabinet, but the top three are made of MLAs, including 2 that are local to us. So we have one MLA who sits on this Walrus committee as a parliamentary secretary from Richmond. And we also have one from the Coquitlam Burke Mountain Ridings. And our honorable minister within Walrus is from Smithers. So as noted above, they handle environmental sustainability, and our water resources fall under this. So I know that some people within our group here is kind of wondering about the IAF funding and water infrastructure and how that impacts them. So if anybody has not heard of IAF, it actually stands for the Investment Agriculture Foundation. And it is a granting sub-organization that delivers programs and services to support a thriving agriculture and food sector in British Columbia. Some of those programs are wonderful. They're a great help for farmers, especially those who have their rural properties and they keeping up for production. So many funding programs are available, including water, perennial crops, student workers, and much more. So if you go to their website, you can just simply type in Investment Agriculture Foundation. You'll get to their homepage and you will see all of the programs and the grants that they have open at certain times. Now, that being said, if you chose to apply for funding and it was definitely available in regards to water infrastructure and growing water infrastructure on your farms are very important. As you know, that's kind of why they had it as kind of a grant for you to apply for. But they are working very much closely with the ministry, and they did admit, yes, they're working on it. They acknowledge that the timing is off for well registration if you've applied for water funds. So they are aware. They know that there is a delay within the applications and approving them. But then if your IAF funding also says, well, yeah, you can have your water infrastructure grants, but it also depends on if your well is registered and licensed. But if we're kind of out of step with timing, that becomes a bit of a problem. So at this point, the ministry has said, please keep calling if it needs to be every day for Encounter BC. And with that being said, if you are really in a pickle and you just can't help it because this is April 22nd being Earth Day, you have a local farmers institute that can probably assist you with that, because things are always better when there's a group of people with the same problem than one individual person. So you have a local farmers institute, so please use them if you feel that you're not getting in. Okay, so like I promised, we have a little short, informative presentation. And for more information on our webinars for the fall, please sign up for the LEPS newsletter by responding to my email. And for those who it was sort of secondhand, you received the Zoom link by someone else, they can also just touch base with me and I can add you to the LEPS newsletter, because there's more webinars that we have. Even if you want to have a site consultation or have plants brought to you in the fall for your property, because we don't really do a lot of planting of, stream bank plants or anything like that, in the hot sun. So we're going to be delivering those to you in the fall for fall planting. Have a site consultation and you'll get those plants that are suited to your property. And don't worry about the site consultation. It's just me. There's no one from the government, and all site consultations are confidential. Eco Action Canada does not want your address. They just want to know the activities that we've done to help educate and do our outreach. You can also join the private well network and get some savings on testing your well. So yes, there are some savings a little bit by joining the private well network. And also for all of those webinars that we've had in the past, you can view our LEPS Langley YouTube channel for our past webinars, including this one you're viewing, and how to license and register your well. So actually I believe it was February of 2022, the Farmers Institute with LEPS actually held a online webinar from the Ministry of Environment, and we had a water specialist actually walk us through how to online register your well, and that is recorded also on our YouTube channel. So I have two emails at the bottom of your screen here. So the one that is me with the LEPS hat is agriculture@leps.bc.ca for any of your site consultations, any other personal questions that you may not want to ask after I hit stop on the recording. Or if you have, a water issue that you feel very strongly about, then reach out to the Langley Farmers Institute at gmail.com, because you will also get someone on the other end who will answer all of your questions. And, also would like some feedback if you're having issues with water. And that concludes our presentation today. Thank you. And I will stop the recording.